If I could travel back in time and have a conversation with my 16-year-old self, that teenage girl who was absolutely petrified to sit her GCSEs, lacking guidance, having never sat an exam before, and to be quite honest, freaking out about the entire thing, this is exactly what I would tell her. This is exactly what I wish I had known before I sat my exams. Whether you are sitting GCSEs, A-levels, international qualifications, whatever it may be, if you have any sort of high stakes assessment, this is what I want you to know before you enter that exam hall or you enter that examination room. Your teachers will focus on pushing you to be the best you can possibly be. However, they do not give advice about revision, about staying calm in the exam room, about managing exam anxiety, and that is what I want to talk to you about today. Because I genuinely believe that these things are more important than the exam itself. Before we get started, I want to remind you that your mental health means more than any grade you could possibly ever get. And if you are new here, my name is Tilly. I give you my top study tips and tricks every day, and this is everything that I wish I had known before I sat my first set of exams. First things first, I'm going to start with the most important thing. It has nothing to do with revision. It has nothing to do with the way you answer the exam. It has to do with staying calm. You could be a literal genius. However, if you freak out in that exam room and you get really wound up and very anxious, you might experience brain fog. You might go blank. You will be focusing more on these overwhelming emotions and anxiety, panic, than you are on the exam itself. It doesn't matter how well prepared you are if you don't understand how to keep yourself calm in a high stakes testing environment. This is something that I should have learned before I walked into that exam hall. And look, this is just a little personal anecdote. In my first ever GCSE exam, I completely freaked out and I didn't know what was happening because I had never felt such a strong emotion, especially in the school hall where I'd been probably 1,000 times in the past couple of years. I didn't know what was happening, and consequently I scored really poorly in my exam. In my first GCSE exam, I got the raw marks equivalent of a C, and I came out, luckily I had 2 more exams to back that up, so I came out with a grade 9 in the end, but I really didn't do well in that first GCSE exam because I felt so nervous and I couldn't properly focus. So number 1 is learning how to keep yourself calm, but how do you do this? First thing I recommend is breathing. One of the best things that you can do to slow your breathing and calm yourself down is to inhale for a count of 4 and exhale for a count of 6. It doesn't matter which ratios you use, as long as you are exhaling for longer than you are inhaling, this is having a stronger calming effect. The longer exhale triggers a stronger calming signal for your brain. It also forces you to ground yourself in where you are, so start practicing some sort of mindfulness. I don't know if you've ever heard of the 5 things you can see, 4 things you can feel, 3 things you can touch, 2 things that you go through the senses, and then the 1 is usually the 1 thing you can smell because it's very hard to distinguish between smells. One of the things I also really like to do is tap on my wrist. Now, there is some minor physiological evidence that this will help calm you down. So like I was saying about the longer exhale, it activates your parasympathetic nervous system. So this is basically your rest and digest system. Tapping on your wrist is a clear, this is a thin layer of skin. Basically blowing cold air onto your wrist or tapping it with something cold, my hands are always cold, especially when I get nervous. It can slightly reduce this sympathetic arousal, which is your fight or flight system. But then in addition to this, it also just grounds you because you're focusing on that sensation, not your worries about the exam itself. Next up, now that is out of the way, the second most important thing to understand about exams, particularly standardized exams, is that there is a way to answer the exam. Plain and simple. You don't need to be a genius to get the top grade in a standardized exam like GCSEs, A-levels. I'm certainly not a genius, and I got top grades in both of those sets of examinations. It is all about learning how to answer the exam in the way in which the exam board wants you to. You need to give the examiner exactly what they want to see. I study economics for my degree, and if I just answered an A-level economics question in a way where I just give all of the relevant information that I think is important to know and go down all of these rabbit holes, make my answer very convoluted, one, it's going to be too long, and two, it's not going to give the examiner exactly what they want to see. Understanding this is especially important in essay-based subjects. In the UK, you have these different assessment objectives outlined by the exam boards, and they are assessed in each type of question. They will not say there are 2 AO1 marks on offer, there is 1 AO2 mark in this question, for example. You need to infer that, and you need to know what the question is asking you to do. This is why teachers will give the PEE, paragraph structure. And this varies slightly depending on which subject you're doing, but point, evidence, explain. These are the 3 assessment objectives that are assessed in practically every exam. Extensions of this are, for example, PAS for GCSE English. So this is analysing, zooming in on specific terminology, zooming out for broader context. These are assessment objectives in this subject. So if they don't tell you exactly what they're assessing, how on earth are you to know? You need to do practice, and you need to speak to your teachers about it. You need to ask them why you dropped 1 mark on this essay. You need to ask them where you could improve, which areas are particularly weak. There is no better practice for the exam than the exam itself. You want to have exhausted all of the past paper revision resources before you walk into that exam room. Your mocks, genuinely scrutinise the marks that you got given and ask your teacher why. And if your teacher doesn't have the time, or let's say, unfortunately, you don't have a teacher, there are, luckily for you, a lot of teachers on this app that will give you advice. So if you go onto YouTube, you search AQA, GCSE, biology, higher, there will be a teacher breaking down how to get all of the marks in a 6-mark question. Now, this is a lot less transparent for essay-based subjects. For science, if you try out a 6-marker and then you try to mark it yourself using the mark scheme, which is given by the exam board, it will be on their website, then you can identify exactly where you lost marks, and they will say, oh, this is an AO2 mark. And if you didn't write that sentence, you will know, okay, this assessment objective is weaker for me in this type of question. I know what to do next time. The examples that are given in examiners' reports are very clear. It's not exactly open for interpretation, especially in maths and science. And that's one of the reasons that I really liked those subjects, and they were my best subjects at both GCSE and A-level. However, English, history, religious studies, it's all a bit more, the marking rubric is all a bit more nebulous. It's not very clear. You may be marked in bands. For example, in A-level business studies, you're marked in bands. You cannot pick out exactly where you're getting the marks, and that paragraph structure that you're using, it is just a framework to make sure you are developing your points properly. However, this means it is more open to interpretation by the examiner what mark they give you. Don't get me wrong, when papers are marked, they are double and sometimes triple checked to make sure you have been awarded the right grade. However, it's much more difficult to understand how you pick up marks in essay-based subjects. However, I say difficult, not impossible. I know so many people that have understood how to do it. Unfortunately, in GCSE English, I was not one of those people, and I did get 2 8s, so this is why I always say, oh, I got all grade 9s and 2 8s. You need to understand what the examiner is looking for, how to develop your points, and how to make your writing flow, as opposed to just very clearly bullet pointing. A simile is this. This is an example of a simile. The writer used it because, and then moving on to the next paragraph. It's about developing your points, having a paragraph structure, if that would be helpful. You don't need one. And doing practice paper questions, looking at model answers, watching YouTube videos on how other teachers are teaching their students how to answer these types of questions, because this is all going to be really helpful, and you can try to emulate what a top student is doing in your work without directly verbatim copying them. And the more practice you do, the more used to this you get, and it becomes like second nature. You'll also find the more practice you do, just a little side note, same sort of questions come up over and over again, particularly in maths and science and in languages. You will understand that it's not enough to just say a curved lens in GCSE physics or A-level physics. You need to say a convex or a concave lens. Have that level of specificity and make sure you are giving the examiner what they want to see, because they will penalise that sort of behaviour, and you get used to that for all of the different topics in every subject. And the last thing that I wish somebody had taught me before exams is that you don't need more notes. You don't need to make more notes. You need more retrieval. Making notes, rewriting from the textbook, even just condensing your own notes is somewhat passive. You do need to condense your own notes, especially to make these exam cheat sheets, pick out the most important parts, especially review concepts that you've not done for a while. But at the end of the day, the best way to revise is active recall and active retrieval. Pair this with spaced repetition and you will literally be unstoppable. Rewriting notes feels productive, making them more pretty. It feels productive, but it's not. Your time would be much better spent trying out these practice paper questions from memory, by the way, blurting down everything you know about this specific topic, maybe giving yourself some cues, really trying to remember something. You know, when you're sat there and you're stuck and you're really trying to retrieve information, it's just not coming to you. You want that. Learning is meant to be difficult. If it's not hard, you're not doing it right. The thing is, when you do successfully retrieve this information that you've been stuck on for a few minutes, then it will be so rewarding. It will reinforce those neural connections within your brain much more effectively, and you will be able to practice that skill in the exam itself, and that is what you need to do if you are going to get top grades. One of the best ways to use active recall for exams is flashcards, because you can do them anywhere. The pieces of information are short. You can cover so many different topics in a very short amount of time, because you are literally just sat there turning over one flashcard. It could be on osmosis, another one could be on the kidneys. Okay, they are quite related. Another one could be on plant cells. The point is that you can cover many different topics all of the time to make sure this information is fresh in your mind. I found that flashcards were really, really helpful, especially when you are trying to rote memorize facts. I'm not going to lie to you. There are things that you just need to memorize. You need to remember vocabulary, especially when languages, when it's not very intuitive. So let's say you're studying Mandarin, how on earth are you going to deduct which character matches to each word? I'm studying Mandarin right now, that's why I feel that pain. I used to live in France when I was studying French. There were some words that I could just deduct by reasoning. Very similar to the English. There's one word I remember it now, but I literally couldn't remember it for like 8 years. The point is, I couldn't remember it, and there was no like logical way to remember it in my head. There are things you need to remember, particularly quotes for English, formulas for science, units, the exact date of the Geneva Convention. No way to deduct that from reasoning. I won't sugarcoat it, there are things that you just need to remember, and it is a pain. But that is the way that the system operates at the minute. Instead of sitting there and saying, this is stupid, this is unfair, you have to work with it. There are elements of the education system that are incredible. The fact that we do actually have to use these critical thinking skills in order to get the top grades. So let's think about the last question in the paper that you get in maths. It will be incredibly difficult. That's on purpose. That is, they mix and match topics so that you have to make these synoptic links between different subtopics. It's not common sense. You have to use your critical thinking skills. You can't just take formula and plug in numbers and get to the answer. You actually have to understand what it is that you're doing. That is probably one of the good things about it. But yes, fortunately there is this rote memorization in practically every subject. I don't particularly agree with it, but to be honest, this video is not focused on my critique of the structural problems in the contemporary British education system. This is about how you can prepare yourself for the exam and the things that I really wish I had known. If you did find this video helpful, then be sure to like and subscribe, because I am going to be posting not only my top study tips and tricks every single day before your exams, but I am also going to be posting information about each subjects that I did at GCSE and A-level. And I have a few friends that did A-level subjects that I didn't do, who I am currently collecting advice from to make informative videos for you guys. Anyways, if you think you would find that helpful, be sure to like and subscribe. If you have any questions, be sure to leave them in the comments, and I wish you the best of luck in your revision. I'll see you in the next video.